Hey, Philadelphia. I am so happy to see you. This is really, I love this space. I love this city. I love this guy, George Saunders. I think, actually, I'm going to venture that George doesn't actually need an introduction, but I'm going to tell you a little story because that's what we do when we're talking about George, right? So a buddy of mine in 1996 sends me, I have been selling books for more than a minute. A buddy of mine sends me this galley, and he's like, I just need you to take a look at it. I think you're going to get a kick out of it. And I'm like, okay, George Saunders, okay, Tobias Wolff, MFA from Syracuse, CivilWarLand in bad decline. And every book that comes out after that, I'm like, oh, hello. Like, I don't even need, in some cases, I'm not even working off the fancy arc that you've seen. Sometimes I get a typeset manuscript and I'm like, that George's name, I'm good. And it's kind of a delight to be able to watch folks come to someone that you've been like, oh, hey, this guy, he's really cool and he's blowing up genre and he's blowing up ideas about great language. And also, I have a thing for Tobias Wolff. That man can write. Like, if you have not discovered his stories, please go find them. George has changed the way I think about Grace Paley. George has changed the way I think about Tilly Olson. And so to be able to hang out in the real world with someone who has so profoundly impacted my life as a bookseller, and certainly my life as a reader, is kind of cool. And then we're also coming hot off the heels of a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Book Foundation. Part of me thinks you're not old enough for that. I'm a little concerned. That seemed a little premature, with all due respect. And then also remember, among George's students are Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, who is, right, I think we all agree, the man is brilliant. So it's kind of nice to be able to see this through line for all of the work George has done. So here we are with Vigil, right? And a lot of folks have been saying, oh, it's been 10 years. Well, let's not forget Liberation Day, please. There was a story collection in there, all props to the stories. But it has been a minute since Lincoln and the Bardo, which won the Booker. And delightfully, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, really holds up. I went back to it last week because I was like, okay, it's been a minute. And I've read Vigil a couple of times now. And the two are so deeply in conversation. And I know it took years to write Bardo. You thought about Bardo for what, 20 years before? Okay. Vigil came a little more quickly, right? Can we just put the two together for a second before we get really deep in with Jill and Boone and everyone? But Vigil's been out in the world now for what, 3 days? 3 days, and everyone's been on the edge of their seats waiting for this book. Ever since we knew it was coming, we've all been saying, wait, what's happening? So what changed for you? Why have we moved off of stories and gone to this novel? Why didn't you need a story collection?
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only 3 stories, but it's a collection. Mm-hmm. No, it just, honestly, I was thinking today, I've never planned a book. Mm-hmm. So, well, this book would be a good one to be next, but I think they kind of stand there in line, so get done with that one. And then really what's happening is your subconscious goes through certain things writing book A. Mm-hmm. And you hit certain obstructions and you break through and you feel frustrated that you can't do this stuff in this book, but it's not appropriate. And then when that one goes out, it's almost like that hallway fills up with the next book. So, and for me, the beautiful thing is I really try not to even interrogate what it is.
Right.
Just sit down and see what happens. So with this one, the only thing that I remember thinking is that the format of Lincoln and the Bardo was really exciting.
Yeah.
In doing it, it was like, oh wow, this has got so many things you can do. So I was kind of sad to let that go. So I said to myself, I'm going to write a second book in that format.
Okay.
Set in modern times. Started doing that, and in saying that, I'd already violated my credo because I had a plan. So I was up in our house, and I took a couple weeks, and I'm writing, and I got 2 different voices, mm-hmm. and I had that format, and I had one of those beautiful writing moments where you just go, over a 3-day period, this is good. Then you go, but I think it might suck. And then the third day you go, no, it definitely sucks. So the problem was that the form, in Lincoln, the form just appeared. It was like so, it was the right form for that. And I resisted it, and it insisted. That was good. This one I said, hey, book, I've got a form for you. And it was like, all right, I'll try. So I had this section with 2 ghosts and 1 dead guy, blind guy. And the 2 sections, the 2 ghosts were speaking in really different dictions. So there's one guy, kind of a very elevated guy, like from 1880, sort of sounds like in Bardo. And there was a woman who kind of was, in my neighborhood in Chicago, kind of died in 1977, kind of a working class speaker. So I said, well, one of you guys has to go away because I can only have one narrator. But when I went through, certain parts of the text wouldn't go. So I just put them in one document. And I read through it, and I'm like, yeah, I like all that, but why is she speaking in 2 different languages? And then they're like, yeah, right, exactly. That's your book. Let's figure that out. So that was the start of it. It just was sort of the next thing I felt like doing, really.
Okay, it's the start of it, but the sense of play in the way this narrative unfolds. I mean, yes, okay, so we're on the deathbed of this man called K.J. Boone. I am not going to spoil this for those of you who have not yet read the book. But Boone's a complicated dude. He's prickly. He is very proud of everything he's accomplished. He's that guy. And he's unprepared for Jill Blaine, who is there to help him into the next portion of the program, right? I love Jill's voice. I love Boone's voice. I love the fact that you threw them into a room together. But this brings me, okay, we're going to take a dive into Gogol for a second. You've got that chapter in A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, right? The Gogol chapter, The Nose. And I'm thinking, okay, fine. I never leave one of George's pieces without being changed in some way, right? Either you learn a new thing or you think, how did I not notice that before? But I want to put the 2 in context for a second because I feel like your love of Gogol is pulsing through Vigil because of the absurdity. Because, Jill is so naive. She died in 1976. She has no idea what all of this is, right? And to slap them 2 together, and then you get the other ghosts, the mad Frenchman, who's a delight. Grumpy, but a delight. How do you, when you're writing about grief and you're writing about conflict and you're writing about all of the things we don't know or should change, how do you maintain a sense of play?
Well, what I do is I say the sense of play is everything.
Okay.
There's nothing else. Because the minute you do it, you're being functional. And I don't think fiction likes that too much.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of like play. And, if you hear kids playing, they're having a lot of fun, but there will appear a subtext.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm playing mostly with voice. That's kind of what I like. And then at some point, something starts to come from underneath that is meaning, But I always kind of look kind of askance at it, like, could you mind, stay out of my book for a minute. and it won't. But the longer you keep that out, that keeps my very reductive engineering mind from seizing meaning and putting it all over the place. So for me, the fun is really the first thing. And 90% of what I'm doing in the day is revising text to make it more energetic and funnier and weirder. And then at some point, you can kind of go, oh yeah, okay, this is starting to mean this. But more often, it's starting to cause something.
Okay.
Like you set something up on page 6, and you are just having fun and you're just entertaining, and then suddenly something is a little latent there, and it insists on being carried over. That's plot, or that's structure,
Okay, but voice. Let's sit with voice for a second. Voice is the thing that drives everything for you, though. The story comes out of the voice.
Yes.
Okay, and the language and voice aren't synonymous for you, though, right? Or ish.
I'm not sure. For me, really, it's more like it just goes it goes primeval to when I was a kid in Chicago.
Okay.
And you could get a certain amount of credibility by just doing the voice of somebody. It could be your teacher, your mom was always good, you know. And the highest level achievement was if you could make somebody up and kind of start doing, hey, I'm Rodney. And then people go, and in my circle of friends, that didn't get you banned. You're like, oh, hi, Rodney, you know. but you know, there were days where you would sort of stay in that character or come in and out. And it's fiction writing because you start with the voice that you can do that's sort of funny, and then you start embroidering characteristics on that voice, and then that makes Rodney have a desire, you know. And so that was the essence. And I had a long period in my 20s and 30s that I've written about before where I just was really trying to be a real writer like Hemingway or Joyce, and that always involved deciding what to do and then doing it. When this voice thing came alive again, suddenly I was like, oh my God, what a relief, you know. It's so easy to do voices and have fun. And when the plot started coming out of that, I thought, okay, so note to self for the rest of your life, even if you become a professor, don't forget that it's really ridiculously simple. From my approach, just do a voice. And if the voice comes alive, everything else will follow. And revision follows because you can, as we did as kids, you could have the voice, but by 2 o'clock, that person had changed a little bit because of the way you were doing him and the running jokes that you produced. So that was character development, you know.
I need voice more than anything, and I may occasionally use voice as a synonym for character. Occasionally, not plot, but I'm okay if things don't happen. That's the thing I'll forgive. If there's a compelling enough voice, I'm like, we can sit on this stump, I'm okay. And I don't have to like characters, but I need to be invested. And I'm a little surprised at how invested I was in KJ Boone. That is not a dude I want to sit next to at a dinner party. I have sat next to dudes like that at a dinner party. We can make it through to dessert. It's good. But man, I was invested in his arc. I really needed to know how things were going to play out for him. And Jill surprised me. I was predisposed to kind of like her because she shows up in sort of a messy way, and like, who amongst us is not messy, right? And absolutely predisposed to like her. And then I realized she was a deeply unreliable narrator. And she has no idea how unreliable she is. And Boone is kind of a pain in a way, but he's not unreliable. He knows what he knows. He's a very certain dude.
But you hit on it because he's somebody that I think it would be easy. Well, actually, as a lifelong liberal left of Gandhi, he's an oil dude, and so my insecurity says, I want to say to you, my audience, I hate him. You know, that's safe. You hate him. But then you're not. I think at some level, even an audience that agrees with that feels like, George, you're kind of cheating a little bit. You know, you're making a stick figure and kicking him around. That's not really what fiction does. So the game with anybody, but with somebody who's maybe a negative character, it feels to me as like you have to stay away from making easily dismissed cartoon. You also have to stay away from that kind of enabling thing where you invest him with virtues he wouldn't have in real life, so we can all love him, and you got to kind of thread that needle. And so that was a real problem and a worry until finally I went, well, it's just in the lines. You know, so if you get him up to a certain moment and he thinks of his wife, what does your research into that kind of person tell you? Are these wife beaters? They're actually not. You know, a lot of people who are really reprehensible have pretty high functioning family lives, at least from the outside. So it just, everything comes down to the lines. And the beauty of that is, in the end, you go, who did I make? And maybe only in the last week or so you can get a clear view of it, because the revisions have accumulated, and there he is, you know.
But there's also this sort of undercurrent of we're born who we are, which, okay, I'm an ex-Bostonian, so that's not unfamiliar, right? But I was a little surprised that was a piece of Vigil. And part of me thinks you're just wrestling with the idea that you haven't decided.
Well, that's true. And because when you put an idea in a book, the book will whittle away at it and undercut it. But for me, I mean, just since I'm sure there are writers here, that there's a section in the book that we're referring to, and it came in and out of the book many times.
Yeah.
And the reason it's in there is because every time I took it out, the whole thing collapsed, and I didn't care anymore. Whenever I try to write past it with something else, I'm like, nope, that's bullshit. So then you get that kind of funny thing where like, well, one, I don't want to put that in there because it makes difficulties. But also, if I don't, the book is nonsense. So then that's kind of fun, where you go, all right, that's, it's like that old joke about the doctor says, if the guy goes to the doctor and says, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Don't do that, So in that situation, doctor, it pains me to put this in the book. And he says, well, put it in the book and work through it, because otherwise you're a baby, Nothing against babies. but
Yeah, I'm not sure a baby could actually write this book, but okay.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, some kids get language faster than others. I do wonder, though, how prepared. I mean, Jill has done this thing 343 times. This KJ Boone is the 343rd person that she has helped in the way she's about to help. And she's so naive. But it's so much a product of her time and her play. I mean, she's died in 1977. We learn all sorts of things about her life prior to this particular incarnation. She's kind of a delight because she doesn't know that much, and at the same time, you still give her an arc.
Yeah.
She actually gets to grow. She's a ghost, and she still gets to grow.
Yeah.
Only George Saunders could do this. Where does that come from? I mean, that's not the story's need. Is that you poking at an idea?
No, I mean, actually, it comes from that thing I started with, where she was speaking in two different voices.
Right.
So, I think, in workshop, for example, at least as it was in 1985 when I started, the whole idea was to find the goiter. Why is this story fucked up? And then we would say why it was, and then you're supposed to go home and be ashamed and fix it, But then, what you come to find out is they're actually, if a person's a good writer, which everybody at Syracuse is, there's not a problem. There's just a condition. And so if something seems like a problem, that actually truly is the key to the next, it's the elevator to the next level of the story, if you don't reject it. Okay, so you say, I've got a problem. Yeah. So in this case, the fact that there were two voices in there, I couldn't ignore it. I didn't want to lose it. So then you start saying, okay, well, to the character, like, hey, can I just bother you for a second? We've been revising a while here, you and me.
Right.
Can you tell me why you're speaking in two different voices? And she will tell you, But I don't think you can't ask it too intellectually, but you can say, I want to put this on the table. I'd like us to figure this out. And then, in a nutshell, what happens is she's dead, and she's had an incredible experience in her death that gave her this amazing, blissful realization, and she's been floating around with that. But also, she's very, very susceptible to real life.
Yeah.
So she gets near, for example, a wedding, she becomes herself again, and her voice changes. Right. So that was the kind of the reveal, which is also her character stroke. But so she's a little bit like if you were, like if you're trying to stay off a certain substance, and you walk through a room of it, she's kind of like that. So that's, to me, that's sort of her tragedy, is that she is very, very happy being in this kind of holy, almost holier than thou state.
Oh, yeah, she does like that.
But she can't sustain it, so that's her deal.
So she's still human.
She's
still human, even as a ghost. She's still
except
human.
she's disembodied, so it's a drag.
Okay. But there's more, I think I have this idea, I don't know, ghosts seem less temporal to me when I'm reading them in fiction. If you look at Beloved, right, like that's a ghost story. Yeah. Jill and the other characters who are not Boone are ghosts. But they feel necessary. They feel like it's, and I go back to Lincoln and the Bardo for a second. There's a moment where Lincoln is in the tomb with his son, and he's holding him, and he's saying, well, I always thought he was always going to be here. Like, he was not fragile, he was not fleeting. And then he starts going back, but as a baby, he looked this way, and at 4, and and then finally at 11, he's dead. And just this idea that we can always capture the thing that's sitting in front of us, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is, we can't. And I love the idea of a ghost being sort of this thing that's always, in the back of your brain going, hey, are you paying attention?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, also, fictionally, if you spend 40 pages with somebody, whether they're a ghost or a duck, you're kind of invested in that thing. So it's, and of course, any story about death, nobody knows what happens, So in a certain way, it's just, you kind of say, it's the last day of your life, and everything gets a little supersized, right. And then you, at least, from my perspective, you go, well, it's also true today. Like right. in the Buddhist teachings, what's your mind going to be like at death? Oh my God, just like right now.
Right.
Except you're going to be in pain probably, so that's a cheerful thing. But, in other words, I don't think you could really write a book about the afterlife because nobody knows anything about it. But I think what both those books are about is about the fact that there's a certain energy active in any person.
Yeah.
And it comes from your thoughts and it comes from your projections and your desires and all that. And that's so sweet, but it's also so dangerous. And so I suppose at death you stop, and that the Buddhists say that your mind is like a wild horse. And while you have a body, it's tethered to a fence. But when you die, the tether gets cut. And the mind goes like supersized. So whatever happens you've cultivated, that's what you get. So I think both these books are kind of in that realm where so there's all kinds of physical manifestations and maybe extreme neurosis because the body has been left behind.
I want to switch gears slightly because we have audience questions. If you could haunt anyone, who would it be and why?
Oh boy.
Thank you, Julie.
I might take a shot at Stephen Miller, yeah.
If you could have recommended a book for Mr. Boone to read during his lifetime, what would it have been?
Oh, probably this one would be good. That would confuse the hell out of him. No, I don't know. I think his deal. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. One of the things about, this book is in sort of a traditional, like Christmas Carol and Master and Man by Tolstoy and maybe Death of Ivan Ilyich. So in those stories, the implicit thing is, can they change?
Right. Right.
And I don't want to give anything away, but one of the things I had to sort of think about was, is there anybody from whom the answer is no?
Right.
And I think for sure, you think how hardened certain people are in their beliefs, and how much energy and time they spend in building up the, the kind of crust, I guess. I think there are certainly people who get to the end and just go, no, I was right all along. And in fact, that would be a kind of comfort,
right.
to just double down on, I had a writing career. I'm not scared of death, that right. kind of, yeah. Be careful with that one. But I think that, there is certainly a world where, the rug gets pulled out of you too soon and you don't change. So it could be that there's no book, is what I'm saying, that would change right. somebody.
Honestly, now having read Vigil twice, I think Boone, he gets his arc, but it is sort of this it's a sort of classical coming of age, old guy, now I know everything. And that's, the change happens and then it just kind of stops because he's like, well, I'm more powerful than a king. This guy is very certain in his thinking.
There is a moment, when that rope does get severed, where suddenly he's swimming back towards the shore, and it's a little too late. Anyway.
A delightfully unexpected moment, though, I think. But watching the development of that character and how it's running parallel. So we're getting his story as we get Jill's, right? And the fact that the two of them meet at all is kind of astounding. And then, this is where I bring in the Mad Frenchman. So the Mad Frenchman has some time on Jill. He died when? Give or take, like 1900s? When did the Frenchman die? 1800s?
1880 something,
okay. So the Mad Frenchman does not share Jill's opinion of their job. He's like, your job is to change this man and make sure he understands that what he has done is not right. And Jill's kind of like, well, no, I just need to bring him comfort. And I'm kind of intrigued by the idea that the Frenchman changes a little more than Jill does.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm afraid we're giving away too much.
No,
but
no, we're not.
Yeah.
I am dancing around so many things. I promise you, you'll all get home, you'll tear through the book, you will not remember the hints that we're dropping. But the Mad Frenchman, he's part of pointing out the absurdity, though. I mean, we need him to be the truth teller in the corner because we've got this unreliable narrator and we've got the guy who's very, very sure of himself. And then we've got the Mad Frenchman who's kind of like, well, actually.
Yeah. But that's kind of like, in that Russian book, one of the things I talked about is that all these kind of intimidating words like theme and structure and character development, they can be a real impediment. They always were for me. I thought, I don't know. So in a certain way, you could think of almost any fictional move as call and response. So in the early drafts of the book, I'd written the part about where Jill talks about her own death, and she has this idea of kind of blamelessness, and she's kind of this mystic, very generous, spirited mystic. So I kept writing her, and there's a voice in my head that was like, yeah, but I know, I kind of believe it, but I kind of don't. So the instinct is, okay, well, that's valid, so let somebody in the book say it. And so that's a call and response. You make a character that you start to have doubts about, and of course, then you can, put that into the book, and suddenly you're having it both ways. You're making a problem, and you're giving yourself various voices to do it. So that's really liberating because then you don't have to have a viewpoint. The author is nowhere in the book except everywhere.
Right.
So that makes it fun. And what I found with this one was that the ending of the book is, I think, more ambiguous than anything I've ever done. And I think it's kind of like part of your mind thinks it's this, and another part of your mind says, no, it can't be that, and I want you to end there. And that's a function of this kind of mechanical means of putting different voices into the book so they can have the argument. And I'm just kind of like the puppeteer, So the Frenchman is my opposition to my own idea that I started at the beginning of the book.
But part of me also wonders if this comes back to something that one of your teachers at Syracuse was a writer called Douglas Unger. And you've hinted at this, and I think you do actually finally tell us what he told you when it came to dialogue. There's an original piece where George is like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you, it's that good. I'm not telling you what my professor told me. And then I think you tell us at Swin.
Told everybody.
Where it's putting the two characters, right? And they're sort of going at it, and each has their own story so front of brain that they can't actually engage with the other person. I mean, am I paraphrasing that right?
Yeah, he just basically said that in bad dialogue, people answer each other.
Right.
How are you, Jim? I'm a neurotic baker. Oh, what do you want? I want to marry Evelyn. Oh, and that's just, it's okay, but it's a buzzkill, the energy. So his thing was, in real life, if you listen to people talk, they're always talking slightly past each other because they're talking out of their cartoon balloons. I'm sitting here thinking about this boot isn't quite comfortable, and you say, how you doing? And I'm like, fine. And you think, oh, he doesn't like me, but my mind is on the boot. So Doug just said it's a kind of a poetic quality that you can get by just letting people talk past each other, and it makes a kind of a space where meaning is being made, but not by what's being said, but by what's being misunderstood.
Right.
And so that was, and so I, at one point, I don't know, I think it would have been before that conversation, but I was at my mom's house in Texas, and she was sitting at the table with my grandmother, and I hid a tape recorder under the table and let it run for 40 minutes. And then I transcribed it, and it was complete nonsense, but they were understanding. But can you put the thing on the blue? Yeah, I said that. No, she knows. I know. It was like 40 minutes of just that kind of dialogue, So that was this.
But that back and forth, that misunderstanding, the place where absurdity lives, right? So what is the intersection of absurdity and satire look like? Or are they running parallel, or are they intersecting?
I don't know. I mean, to me, those are two words that I would always, if they occur to me, I gently push them away.
Okay, why?
Well, because they are good descriptors of what happens, I think, in my work. But for me, it's kind of like the humor in my work and the absurdity comes from me being accurately able to remember things that actually happened to me. or periods in my life,
Okay.
where, so, I mean, for me, the core of absurdity is, over here we have conventional reality and our understanding of it, which is that cause and effect is very simple. I can discern it. I can figure out what to do and do the right thing. People will like me for doing that. That kind of simple mechanics. In real life, it's so much crazier.
Right.
I think because our minds aren't really well suited to grasp the world. It's pretty good at it, but not that great. And the neuroscientists are now confirming this. So I think my reality has been, I think I know what's going on. I act accordingly, and I didn't have it right, and I screw everything up. I apologize. My apology is misunderstood. But the person likes me anyway, and I go have a muffin, like that. So that is not, I mean, to me, that's not, we call a work of fiction absurd because it doesn't match our sort of conventional view of reality. But in fact, the conventional view of reality is very simplistic.
Right.
So if you're in touch with the actual currents of your life, I think absurdity is kind of what results. So in composing, I think what happens is, for me, I'm writing a moment that's, and I'm trying to be sort of a realist, and I write a pretty conventional moment, and something goes, that's not true. There's something wrong about that. It's contrived, or it feels like, false. Then you throw in the banana peel, which somehow is more truthful. It seems like more likely than not that the banana peel would show up. So that's it's not really an attempt to be absurd, but it's an attempt to sort of be accurate to the actual channels of life that as I've understood them.
Okay.
At the same time, one of the reasons I say I'm not a satirist is because I don't. It would be cool maybe if logic was always absurd, but it's only about 30%. So most times you do the right thing, it works okay. But when when somebody gets sick or somebody passes away or something unexpected happens, the curtain parts, and you can see that our usual way of understanding isn't valid. So it's kind of the mix of regular logic and irregular logic that I think makes life so beautiful. And I'm trying to hit that tone in the work rather than everything's always crazy. But, everything's always crazy except when it's perfectly predictable,
But isn't this also a moment where language fails us, right? Like, I mean, you've talked about this before. Language fails us all the time.
Every minute. But it's pretty good.
It's great. It's so good. I would rather take the failures of language than not have language at all. I mean, that's, like, I think about this constantly. If I'm in a country where I don't speak the language particularly well, I'm like, I feel like I'm missing just too much, because language to me, I like that idea of voice, right? I get that satire and absurdity aren't necessarily words we want to use to describe the work, and yet the shorthand works, right? The shorthand works. There is an instant connection to community where we both understand sort of where that middle point is. And then the question is, where do you go from there? I mean, if I think about the titular story in Liberation Day, right, the collection from 22, you do some wild stuff in that story. You do some absolutely wild, and I am there for the entire time thinking, oh yeah, this could happen. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about if you've read that story.
But I think that's an essential part of friendship would be, do you know what I mean? And the guy, of course, and so I haven't said it right. Do you get me? Yes, I do. So that leaning in, I think, is, and especially if the thing you're trying to convey is kind of impossible to convey. And what's the core of that is, I'm trying to tell you something I can't convey, but I trust that you have had the same experience. You rise to the occasion. That, to me, is the essential literary moment. So that there's stretching involved. There has to be stretching involved, and there's like a co-intuition. Yeah, that's mind-blowing that people who aren't in the same body can have an experience that they can bond about in this imperfect language. That's the real. And in the best world, it's just a laugh. Right. There's a line in the story and you laugh. That means that's happened.
I mean, reading is not a passive act, right? There's this idea that you're sitting around, you're holding a book, and you're reading a book. It is not passive. No. Like, we bring ourselves to whatever we're reading, and if we're lucky, we get this amazing act of connection where you're just like, oh, right. high.
Yeah.
Like, this is the world. All of this makes sense. Yeah. So is there any phrase, sentence, or scene you've written that is your personal favorite?
By me?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's not my question. I thought it was a cute question, though.
No, I like them. Usually I like them for a while, and then there's that's actually one of the disciplines of finishing a longer book is you go, well, I liked this scene back in April. And I'm reading it now, and I'm not really finding anything that would change. If I do, I'll change it. But, you kind of remember that you laughed on this page or you removed it on this page, and you keep it in place, but you're a little skeptical, and then at some point it all kind of, it's like, I heard one time Vonnegut say that he, when he looks back at his life's work, it's just like if you were the only skier on a hill, and at the end of the day you look back and go, oh, I was there at noon. That's when I fell at 2 o'clock. So I think for me, it part of the process of being an active writer is I want things to get behind me pretty quick.
Right.
And so I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like any of it. I'm so sick of it.
Following up with a longer question that comes at that sideways. Was there ever a time where you felt trapped within a story while writing, maybe the voice, tone, a character, or character's actions, or maybe trapped by a tone that worked for something in the past, but not for the piece you're working on? Worse, what if you loved the piece despite realizing you're trapped? If so, how do you work yourself out of it? Thank you, Catherine.
That's a great question. I think that's the best is when you're trapped and you still like it. Because, I think what it is a story saying, you have underestimated me, and you're trying to end me, but I have a different idea. Would you wait? And for me, that's become an indicator that I'm onto something good. When I get, and I can actually predict it. It happens at about from a third to a half, and I love it. And then there's a bogging down period, where of course you say, "Oh man, you're a teacher, you idiot." Like how come it's so hard for you? But now I'm like, yeah, no, this is good. It means that the thing has a plan that's bigger than the one I could have imagined for it. I just have to wait. And I think in that waiting, sometimes, you're trying a whole bunch of different things, but there is a kind of a move after it's become really frustrating. And even the shtick that I have is starting to wear thin, and I'm really starting to doubt myself, where you can kind of turn to the story and go, okay, come on. Seriously, we make our living at this, would you? But you're really kind of saying, I hear you that you're not happy with what I'm doing. Can you please tell me what it is? Right. And sometimes it kind of will. There was this story, Sea Oak, that I wrote years ago, and I got stuck on that for about 4 years in the place that the questioner is talking about. And I tried everything, and nothing was working. And I just had that moment, and I said to myself, into the story, what is up? What's going on? And the particulars of that story was that this woman had passed away, and I knew that she was the most interesting thing in the story, and she had to come back.
Right.
But I was doing it with flashbacks and all kinds of things. So I just said to myself, come on, she's got to come back. And spontaneously, a little voice said, from the dead. And I instantly went, oh my God, and I finished it in like 4 days after that. Okay. But that's after 4 years of being in that blocked up position. So I think the thing is, if you, like Stuart Dybek, have you read him? A great Chicago writer. He said, the story is always talking to you, but you just have to listen to it. So if your kid, right, a 3-year-old, suddenly bursts into tears, she's not kidding around, and so if you listen to her, there's complete logic behind what she's doing. So if a story locks up, it's trying to tell you something. So I think a certain amount of faith, like, okay, this isn't bad. I'm not failing. I've actually just bitten off more than I can chew, and I have to kind of just abide with it for a while. I think that's true. Or you could just abandon it and go to law school because
not everyone is built for the thing. I'm also just thinking about something. Was it Tobias Wolff said this to you? You were at a reading. He was reading Chekhov. You were on the West Coast. So I think he had left Syracuse, but you were still at Syracuse. Or no, I guess you were still at Syracuse. But he basically said to you, just don't lose the magic.
Yeah.
And the idea, okay, how many of you have read Tobias Wolff? Right? Like one of the preeminent American, right? But like, magic is not necessarily the thing you think. I think, oh, I love these words, I love these sentences, like this is very familiar terrain to me because I started rereading a couple of things on the train down, and I love his voice. I absolutely love his voice, but magic is not necessarily you think about a guy.
What he was referring to is, this is when I first got to Syracuse.
Yeah.
And I'd gotten in with a kind of one-off crazy story that I managed to write, and then I was kind of like, oh God, that's so irrational and left-wing. I didn't know what it was. It was just like sci-fi. So at a party, I cornered him and I said, I just want you to know, thank you for letting me in, but I'm done with that crazy stuff. And now I'm going to get into my Hemingway. And he's a great teacher, so instead of saying that's wrong, he just looked at me and said, good, don't lose the magic. Which I did. He knew I was going to, and then I did, because I think what he was sussing out was the determinism of what I was saying. I'm going to do this and all will be well. And I think in that earlier work, he felt something a little more loose. But the great teaching was he didn't feel, I think he knew that he couldn't clear that up on the spot. I had to go off and spin my wheels for a few years. And then later when I wrote the first story in the first book, I sent it to him. And in a similarly Zen way, he said, I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
And that was it. And he's an amazing person.
He's if you haven't, please go read him. It does bring me, though, that story brings me to the idea of sort of regrets versus forgiveness versus comfort, right? Again, all three sort of thrumming below the surface in Vigil, definitely also in Lincoln and the Bardo, but specifically here in ways that are surprising. How do you feel as a writer about regret, though?
About regret?
Regret.
I've had a few.
Yeah.
But then again, no, I don't have much regret because kind of like Jill in the book, I look at. I had a Buddhist friend who said, "Good result, good cause," which means if you're okay with where you are, then you might make the case that everything that happened up to then was perfect. So I had a great time on this whole writing thing, and had so much more luck than I thought I would. So for me, I don't have too many regrets. And I think it's almost like it's not fair to say, oh, if only I had written better when I was 30. Like, well, then you're like starting, you're taking everything away that you've done, and you're kind of starting the world. So I don't have too many, not really.
Comfort versus freedom. What's the difference?
Well, for me, comfort would mean helping a person get into better relation with the truth.
Okay.
So when I'm uncomfortable, it's usually because I'm not telling the truth about something. And so in my life, my wife Paula will always kind of say, "You're kind of being full of shit." And I'm like, yeah. And then as soon as she says that, and I adjust, and I feel comfortable again. So I think that, or maybe it's discomfort would be when your vision of yourself is being maintained so rigidly in the face of counterfacts, and you're insistent that you knew this was true yesterday, you knew who you were, the world is telling you otherwise. That's really uncomfortable. Or in a writing sense, again, the story that you know where the story's going, it's not going there, you're uncomfortable, you're a failure, you're an imposter, but just go, well, the story isn't going where I want it to go. That's true. And then that feels comfortable to me. It doesn't always feel like peaceful, but it feels like, okay, your mind is aligned in the right way, something like that.
So where does meditation fit in? I mean, you've been a practicing Buddhist for years.
And I've also been not practicing for the last 3 or 4, to be honest. Yeah, but that that's kind of a form of meditation, because the monkey mind, it likes to come back.
Monkey mind is real.
The neurosis comes back. So, but I think for me the meditation, I think writing was probably meditation before I knew what it was. Just in the sense that when you're concentrating on your prose, and if you're concentrating in a certain flavor that doesn't have much to do with analytics, then of necessity the rest of your mind goes a little quiet. I mean, just like if you're trying to tie your shoes in it or untie your shoes into a tough knot, you're generally not thinking about your childhood. You're just trying to get the thing undone. So I think for me there was a feeling after I'd written that now I associate with post meditation, which is, wow, for a minute there I was kind of free of all that chatter,
Right.
And then maybe on another level, there's just the idea that if you're reading the stuff that you wrote yesterday, you have loyalty to it, but that's not so good. So
Right.
the idea of being able to read it fresh for exactly what it is, I think is somewhat similar to the idea of again, quieting your mind down and seeing what's actually happening, as opposed to that nonstop narrative that's telling you what's happening. So they're similar, but I mean, I'm not a person who says I don't need to meditate because I write. Because in writing, there's such an active element of ego as well that is. So I think.
Well, you got to build a world. I mean, you can't not have an ego as you're building a world.
Yeah. Well, and also for me, it's kind of, I'll be writing a story and go, ooh, the New Yorker's going to love this baby, and
I'm sorry, that's a legitimate response.
and then also, but what's interesting is it flickers on and off. Then that goes quiet, and you're like, oh, So I think it's pretty fun actually to go in a 6-minute bout at your desk. All kinds of crazy stuff is happening.
Yeah, but I also like the idea that you can, at times, be a very good judge of the work in front of you. I mean, you can know when something is swinging, and you can know when it's maybe time to just slide that aside and go get a sandwich.
You can know. You have to know.
Right.
But then, for me, the fun is the next day you have to know, and it might be in contradiction with what came before. So you get this kind of Rubik's Cube experience that.
So do you think short story writing is a dying art?
Not for me.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. I mean, and I have this some story club members in the house, and thank you.
Yay.
But I mean, if you think it is, go there, because that's the most intelligent.
I'm a
rigorous.
bookseller. I'm a big believer in short stories. I'm sorry, this is part of what I do.
Yeah. And it's funny, since the first book came out in '96, everyone's been saying, "Oh, that's a short story. It's on its last legs."
Oh, people have been saying, I've been a bookseller since before some of you were, people have been saying short stories were flailing for some, but I think if you really sit with a story and understand that the purpose is to capture that hinge moment, right, where before flips into after, it's really hard to do. And not every story is meant to suddenly be expanded into a novel. Yeah. Like, it is its own thing.
It's its own thing. It's like a joke.
Yeah.
And like one of the kind of references I use is that you've got the surface level of a story where things are happening and you want to find out if this happens. And then as that's going on and the reader's attention is there, and also the writer's attention is there, underneath something else is developing that isn't conscious, but is intrinsic. And then at some moment that breaks through. Right. And the best story, I think, the writer and the reader become aware of it kind of at the same moment. Like that Sea Oak was like that. I didn't know what that story was about, and suddenly that came through. And I think that's powerful because it's not contrived. It's literally coming out of the first 8 pages, and the reader feels it, and you feel it, and no one's naming it, and it's still going on, and suddenly you both see it at once, and that's a really beautiful. But it's a kind of and it's an acquired skill. I think most people read novels, and that seems pretty similar to me telling you a story from my childhood. Some novels,
right? But for me, I mean, there are 2 ways to read story collections. One, straight through, because then you get the arc of the collection, right, which is always intentional. And then there's the dipping back and forth, and sort of reading things out of order, as it were. Because I mean, every story collection is constructed deliberately. I think. I don't know. I'm delighted that the Story Club is still around and it is thriving, and that people really want to spend time with this form that we've all sort of been told is sputtering. And I'm like, well, actually, it's really not sputtering. It's really not. Yeah. And I think there's lots of interesting, fun stuff. I'm delighted to know that you are working on a story collection.
Yep, always.
27, maybe?
I don't know. I can't commit
I had to ask. Come on. I was not the only person who was waiting for an answer for that. Okay, fine. I mean, it's always exciting to have a book from you, regardless of the format. I mean, although I also heard that there might be another nonfiction in the pipeline. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah. I don't, because I don't know, but I would love that Swimming a Pond in the Rain was really fun, and it was a labor of love, and so I would like to try just something like that again, not the same thing, but something in that vein. Yeah, because that story club it's so. I think I started it thinking, well, I'll do it for a year and see. And
it's been a while, right? How long has it been?
It's been, I think, 4 years. Yeah, And I'm, like these, I was joking earlier, but I mean, things are rough right now.
Yeah.
And it's really a consolation for me to like, even sometimes I just stalk my own comments, like, oh, that's so smart, whoa, amazing, and that's actually been reassuring for me because people, it's not like people are disagreeing on there.
Yeah.
But at this really high, very civil level. So I really will sometimes just go in and, oh, that's going to be rough. Then, oh no, she responded so gracefully, So it's been really, and also for me, to read, the great enemy of someone of a certain age is that you just know too well. And so with stories, I've talked so much about how they work and blah, blah, blah. You can't write a story with that in your mind.
Right,
So
right.
for me to get a chance to put out a Catherine Ann Porter story that I think I understand and then have to write about it to so many people, you got to kind of step up. And I've learned so much about the story just in those last 4 years that I didn't. I mean, that might be why the stories are going a little more slowly, because a lot of my ambient assumptions about stories are kind of getting complicated in a nice way. So,
A couple of different folks asked if you prefer stories to novels to everything else.
I kind of like them. I mean, I don't. Okay, the one thing is with the story, because of this method, you're always looking for plot. You're looking for what the next thing is. And I can get into things where I'll have 2 or 3 sections that are good, and then I'm not sure, and suddenly I'm off in the woods, and I'm in the woods for 8 months.
Right.
And then only later do I go, that was the wrong turn. Come back, start over. So it takes a long time, and it reinforces that feeling that it might not work out. Because sometimes the end is so far that you just like, I have no idea. With the 2 novels that I've written, they both have a kind of a through line, like a 2 or 3 sentence through line. So then you're like, okay, if I can get through that, it will look like a story. And so the game becomes more, I put up the clothesline, and now I get to throw some cool, clothes over the clothesline. So you get to make jokes, and you get to have scenes. So in a certain way, the novel form's a little more comfortable because I know I'll have something. And every day, mostly, I get to have fun with it, embellishing as opposed to creating plot. But they're both pretty good.
I think it's a pretty great way to spend your day.
It's the best.
I mean, it sounds pretty great, but then again, I really love being a bookseller, so,
But I talked to a writer that I really admire, and he's really good at both forms.
Yeah.
And we were having one of these sort of long afternoons where we had plenty of time to talk, and I said, okay, and this is before I had written a novel. I said, tell me the truth. What's the difference in attention that you get from a novel to a story collection?
Right.
He was like 5 to 1. He didn't even hesitate. He knew what I was talking about. And I think that's kind of true. The story collections are a bit of an acquired taste, and but anyway.
But they're a fabulous acquired taste. And I have actually been keeping an eye on the clock because we have lots of folks who want to get their books personalized.
Please.
So this is where I say thank you, George Saunders. Thank you, Philadelphia. I'm Miwa Messer. This is Poured Over, live from Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.